Peeps, Kenny Molotov here in a very different location than you normally see me. I'm actually currently at a house. I'm staying for the next couple of weeks because we're doing a major renovation here and I'm doing all the plumbing basically. So that's why you see a different surrounding than you normally do. It's been a really fun project and I've gotten a lot of footage on it thus far. So I'm very excited to share that with you when the time comes. This is our 10,000 subscriber special. I'm really proud that we've gotten to this point. I've been talking about hitting this milestone for a really long time. So the fact that we finally hit it is a big sense of pride because there were a lot of times in this journey that I've kind of sat back and I've had to reevaluate my relationship with YouTube and my relationship with the content that I bring out. So part of me is shell-shocked because of the amount of difficult decisions that took place to get to this point right here. And the other part of me is just like, man, you know, we stuck it out. We stuck it out. We made it happen. We've gotten better at the YouTube thing. And at the same time, I feel like there's still a lot more growth to be had. Most importantly, I appreciate you all. Honestly, all the messages that I've gotten, there are some of you that have been sticking by me through everything that's happened to me, and I'm hoping to repay that in this video to get a couple of questions answered for you all. We got a bunch of juicy questions and we're gonna try to get those done for you right now. Let's pop onto the phone. Beats by Devon Bolivar. What would you recommend to an apprentice that are preparing for level 2 intermediate plumbing? Any codes to look at ahead of time, i.e. wet venting, circuit venting, yoke venting, etc.? Are there any tips you can recommend on isometric drawings also? So a couple of things there. First of all, Beats by Devon, congratulations on getting into level 2. That's a really big milestone. From what I remember, level 2 had a lot of circuit venting in it. Definitely go back and look into circuit venting. Brush up on everything from first year. So for example, look back at wet venting, remind yourself on the codes, remind yourself on the amount of fixture units each fixture has. That is gonna go a long way. You're gonna be back at it in intermediate and also advanced. So the more you can hammer that into your brain, the better for you. If you do that review, I promise you it'll make life a lot easier. Are there any tips you can recommend on isometric drawings also? Isometric drawings, for those of you that don't know, it's a kind of three-dimensional drawing that we do. We use a 30-60 degree angle. So what that is on one side of the triangle that we use, it's a 30-degree angle. On the other side, it's a 60-degree angle. And if you continuously move back and forth between them, you got this three-dimensional look to your drawing, so you can understand also the distance things are and basically where they stand in comparison to the other fixtures. Because the other two types of drawings that we do in plumbing is we have drain plans, which are from the top down, and then we also have stack elevations where you're looking at a two-dimensional drawing of a house or a building, and that two-dimensional drawing shows the fixtures, but you have no idea if those fixtures are in front of each other or far away from each other in some other kind of three-dimensional plane. So the isometric takes care of that. I think the best set of advice I can give you is go into your basic notes, look at the isometric drawing you did there, and maybe try to recreate it just on your own time, just for yourself. The reason why I say that is because the more you do it, the better you're gonna get at it, first of all, and it's already a project that you've gotten your hands on. And because that's the case, I think it's gonna get easier each round that you do it. And that way, when you're introduced to new fixtures to do isometric for this round, you're gonna be kind of ahead of the game, a little bit refreshed in the process as well. So I would start off by doing that if you haven't done that already. Thanks for the question. So this one's from Funny Stories 557. Kenny, you're starting up your own plumbing company. Is it a one-man show or do you have employees? What is your area you're specializing in, like drains or new construction or renovations or service work? What were some of the obstacles you faced while starting your own company? And I've been watching you since I started plumbing 4 years ago. Good job on the 10K subs. Keep up the great work. Funny Stories 557. First of all, thanks for all that support. Thanks for being here for 4 years of your journey. It is a one-man show. Currently, whenever I go out to job sites, I typically work on my own. However, I do have a group of friends that are also in plumbing that I've been blessed to meet that I call for help from time to time. So for example, on this rough-in that I'm doing, we have 9 fixtures that we're doing, and I was able to call a friend to help me out one of these days to basically throw in a bunch of fixtures together, and it really helped out a lot. But aside from that, it's a one-man show. Everything that you see, including the videos, it's always me just doing it by myself, and the editing, doing it by myself, trying to get content out to you all. What is the area you specialize in, like drains or new construction or renovations or service service work. So, I mean, it's a little bit difficult to answer that because I've done each of these elements. I do drain work, so if somebody were to call me out to snake a drain, that's something that I'm equipped to do. I've been doing that since the beginning of my apprenticeship, so I'm very comfortable with drains. New construction is something I've done in my career a few times, and even though this is a major renovation, it's still sort of like new construction because I am going in, I'm drilling new holes. It's an entirely different layout than before. There are way more fixtures, so it kind of has a new construction vibe, and at the same time it is a renovation, and I've done renovations throughout my entire career. But I guess I would say my area of expertise is service. Service work is what I've been learning over the past 9 years. And in that 9 years, I've done a little bit of new construction. We've built a few coffee shops. I've done plenty of renovations, and I've done tons of drains. So I've been very lucky in my career because I feel like I've been thrust into so many different avenues of plumbing that I feel well-rounded. What were some of the obstacles you faced while starting your own company? So this is a little bit of a, there's an emotional element to this question right here because the circumstances of which that I started my own company was because Dad and I had a falling out essentially. So, there were a couple of things that I had to figure out right away, which is, did I want my own plumbing company? I initially got into the industry for a financial change, but I also got into the industry because there was family involved in it. I had a family-run business already in the family, and I wanted to contribute to that. I wanted to help build it, in other words. So when that was taken out of the equation, I had to sit back and do a little bit of soul searching to finally figure out whether or not I wanted to do this by myself. I didn't get into the career because I was head over heels with working with my hands. I got into the career because my father was in the career, and I wanted to do everything for him. I wanted to help him out. I wanted to build something. I wanted to have something passed on to me. And as soon as that was stripped of the entire concept, I kind of sat back and I went, wait, what's my relationship like with plumbing? Do I love it? Do I enjoy it enough where now that family's taken out of the equation, I can continue rolling the ball? Or was it solely, strictly tied and woven into my family? And if that's the case, is it time to get out? And what I've learned over the past year of not working with my father is I'm happy and I'm proud to be good at this career. I don't think I'm the best plumber on the planet, but I do think that when I walk onto a job site, I help people. And that brings a lot of fulfillment to me. When I'm useful, I feel like there's meaning in my life. And me understanding that relationship I have with the trades is so crucial because now it's quite clear to me that I enjoy the idea of continuing to try to build my plumbing company, bring some sort of satisfaction. And even though the family element is taken away, I still feel like I'm in the right spot, if you know what I'm saying. Denver Charlevoix 699. How do you slope for drain pipes in a real life setting with hangers? So what we typically do is we figure out how much length we have to run the pipe. So let's say we're running it at 24 feet, okay? So at 24 feet, if we're running 1/4 of an inch per foot, 24 times 0.25, we're gonna drop approximately 6 inches, okay? So what we would do is we'd start off with our shortest hanger and we would attempt to run a hanger approximately every 6 feet. And every 6 feet is gonna drop 1.5 inches. So every time we put a hanger up, every 6 feet, we would make sure that it drops approximately 1.5 inches further down. And that's if we're running it at 1/4 of an inch per foot. If we're running at 1/8 of an inch per foot, it would drop a total of 3 inches over 24 feet. So we would slope it less and less depending on the type of slope we're planning to put on it. But basically what you would do is you would start off by cutting your hangers to size, making sure that they are longer and longer each time that you cut them. And that way when you place them up, and let's say you're putting them on a beam, you place them up and you tighten the beam clamp onto the beam and you make sure that they are at a certain distance from the beam. Once you throw your pipe in, because they're all secure, then all you have to do is reevaluate what the slope looks like. You take out your level, you throw it onto the pipe, you see if it has an approximate slope of what you're aiming, and if it does, then you're good to go. If not, you adjust the hangers until you get the type of slope that you want. So this one's from DMLOEWER. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but I appreciate you throwing out a question to me. Is getting thrown to the wolves the best way to learn in our trade? It's a really interesting question because it kind of brings into the idea how people learn. I think for some people, when they get thrown into the deep end or thrown to the wolves, they learn the fastest because they get into a mind state of survival. And that mind state, some people thrive in that mind state. But I think there are other people out there that get thrown to the wolves and they kind of lock up and they don't know how to move forward from there. So I think it comes down to the way you learn. Some people will gravitate towards this, some people will not. Personally, I feel like being thrown to the wolves is something that you could only thrive on if you already have a subset of knowledge. So for example, right now, when I'm doing major renovations like I am right now, there's an element of it being that I'm being thrown to the wolves because all the questions are being thrown at me, all the expectations of solving problems are being thrown at me. But keep in mind, even though it's stressful, I've done so many of these before that I'm able to rely upon my previous knowledge. And I think it's really hard for some people if they don't have previous knowledge in this career, then if they get thrown to the wolves, it's very hard to problem solve in those circumstances. I personally think it's a mixture of both. You want somebody to guide you, to show you the ropes, to kind of give you the gist of what you're supposed to understand. And then once they do that, you kind of want them to go, okay, now that I've shown it to you, go do it. So now you're sort of thrown to the wolves, but you have a little bit of knowledge going into it and you're like, okay, based on what my journey person just said, how do I navigate this problem? How do I start? Where do I start from? Which tools do I bring into the situation? Which direction am I running everything in? What size pipe am I going to use? What kind of pipe am I going to use? Once you have a little bit of knowledge, I feel like it's much easier to be able to problem solve those things because you've seen it before and you've talked about it before. Thanks for the question. Nick KT6GR asks, did you ever consider joining the union? I have considered joining the union a couple of times in my career, especially when I left Dad. It was one of the questions that I had in my head because I have a very good friend of mine named Ryan who's already in the union. So I always knew I could use Ryan as a resource and a reference if I wanted to, and he probably put a good word in for me. But at the same time, my bigger issue with the union was I knew that if I was going to do plumbing, in a sense, my goal was to, at some point, rely upon myself. And I also knew that the union didn't really describe that as well. Do you know what I mean? Also, you couldn't come and go from the union as freely as I do with the other plumbing company that I work for, that sort of thing. You'd be locked in to the union. It's almost like a lifestyle, if you know what I'm saying. So keeping all those things in mind, I came to the conclusion of like, okay, I'm definitely going to continue plumbing. I'm not sure if I want to do this plumbing company yet, but I'm going to try it out and I'm going to see how it goes. And I definitely wanted at some point to attempt to work for myself. So this one's from Ryan Hatton 7751. As a new apprentice still in probation, I hear about other apprentices taking on plumbing side jobs. I was wondering about the legalities of doing that. Can it jeopardize your apprenticeship? I know with electrician apprentices, because it's electricity, they are a lot more strict and you get in a lot of trouble. Also, if one were to take on side jobs, what would be the best course of action to go about it? Maybe stick to small things like faucet/toilet repairs or replacement? Thanks, Kenny. Love your channel. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the question. This is a really good one because it touches upon a couple of things that I think apprentices need to understand. Now, a couple of things that we got to consider. There's the union side of this question and there's the non-union side of the question. From what I understand, if you work for the union, if they find out that you're doing side jobs, I think it's frowned upon. So if that became common knowledge, I don't know how it would go for you. There's a potential of it working against you. Now, if you worked for a non-union company, I don't think it would jeopardize your apprenticeship if you did side jobs. But if you're not covered by WSIB, which is our workers' insurance, and you get injured on a job site, you're in a very bad position and you're not going to be able to work. Like, let's say you broke your foot, you wouldn't be able to work, which means you wouldn't have money coming in. And normally WSIB would, but if you didn't subscribe to WSIB, you're stuck in a position where you're not making money for a little bit of time. You know what I'm saying? So that's one liability that you're taking on as an apprentice going to do side jobs by yourself. The second issue about doing side jobs by yourself is that if there's a major leak that takes place and you don't have insurance for that, like as a plumbing company, I had to get plumbing insurance. I had to prove my license, first of all, show them that I'm a licensed plumber. I had to get my master's license. I had to open up my company. I had to then apply to different insurance agencies to see if they would cover the liability insurance. And I have to pay a monthly fee to make sure that I have that liability insurance, because if God forbid something happens, then that liability insurance is going to take care of the damages. But if I didn't have that liability insurance and I have $1 million leak, that's going to be paid out of my pocket. That's the dangerous part. And it's the same thing for you. If you have a major leak that takes place because of a repair or a side job that you did, then you're looking at a lot of money that you're not able to fork out. You know what I'm saying? So that's just something to keep in mind. It's a little bit of a dangerous game. You are definitely taking risks by doing that, by having side jobs. Thank you for the question. So this is from Lowell Holmes. You ever get overwhelmed when you are unable to problem solve a particular plumbing issue? I'm a second-year apprentice and I'm worried that this will happen to me a lot when I'm a journeyman. Tips to overcome. Straight off the bat, the answer is yes. I get overwhelmed just like everybody else does. And especially since I stopped working for my father, that safety net was taken away from me. So there was a big duration of time where I had a lot of anxiety on the job site, even though I've been doing it for 9 years. So there are moments in time where something happens on a job site and I sit back and I go, man, people are expecting you to know the answer to this. And I feel, almost ashamed sometimes that I'm not able to answer the questions, because at the end of the day, I'm human. I don't know all the answers to everything. So the way I typically work this out with myself is I normally take a breather. I think a lot of the times when I'm getting overwhelmed, it's because I'm bombarded, I'm ambushed by a lot of information and I haven't had time to process through that information, digest it in other words. So what I'll do is a lot of times I'll say, look, let me go to the truck, see what I have inside there, see if I have enough tools for this or if I need material, and I'll figure it out. And I just go outside and have a breather, try to figure out what sort of tools would work for this circumstance, what sort of things I would run into. Sometimes it's important to call a friend and just say, hey, listen, I haven't ever run into this before. How about you? Have you ever seen this? And just get their 2 cents on it, I'm sure by now you've built a little bit of a community yourself. There are some people you can rely upon, and those people are golden. Make sure you keep them by you and that you treat them well, because they're going to ask for help and you're going to ask for help as well. But I normally take a decompression cycle. I normally do something to step away from the situation, take your eyes off of it and your ears off of it for a minute, and then when you come back after a few minutes, it might be fresh in your mind, it might be an obvious answer after that. And another thing I gotta say is that there have been times in my career where I was overwhelmed because of a certain scenario that takes place. But later in my career, those exact same scenarios don't give me anxiety anymore. And a perfect example about this is you have a small trickle of water going through a line, even though you're trying to solder it out, you're trying to sweat something out. So this would stress me out a lot, especially if there was a homeowner standing behind me. But now when I do it, I don't feel the same anxiety because I know it's going to take a while to get that water to stop. I also have tools that I can implement to stop that water as well. And because sometimes, unfortunately, you're just going to have to wait it out. You're going to have to heat up that fitting, and once it heats up, it comes out. And I know that it's not my fault that that's not taking place as fast as I want it to. I know that it's just the circumstances involved. So some of that, Lowell, is just experience. And you understanding that this is part of the game, you're gonna have to wait. And that way, if you have a customer over your shoulder, they're just gonna have to learn that too. It has nothing to do with your competence. It has everything to do with the circumstance that you're in. That homeowner should have got a brand new valve. That should have been their first go-to. It's not your fault that they haven't fixed that valve. That's on them. Thank you for the question. So I got a question from Thomas Santos. As a level 1 apprentice, is it better overall to work in the union or in service? Will the union help me grow more to be ready for level 2 and level 3 exams? So Thomas, first of all, thank you for the question. There's a misconception here that I just want to clear up because I've run into this misconception myself. I used to think the exact same way you're thinking. There are service union companies. Here in Ontario, the way union works is it's typically new construction. That's why I came up with that misconception. That's why you might have felt the same way. But actually, there's an entire service side to union. Even though it might not be as abundant as new construction, there are service companies in the union as well. As a level 1 apprentice, is it better overall to work in the union or in service? I would say it's better to go wherever people are hiring. That's most important. If you're in your first year of your apprenticeship, I don't think you should pick and choose. Personally, I think wherever they allow you to come in and you to start getting your hours is where you go. Now, does the union provide a lot of great opportunities? Absolutely. But the union is not always doing intakes, if that makes any sense. The union has an intake maybe once a year, or if we're lucky, twice a year, so you might not get that opportunity. Will service train you up as well as a union? It depends on the company, but yes, overall, that's the plan, that's the hope, right? If you're looking into the union, I think you're in good hands. Continue looking, but if you can't get into the union, take whatever you can get. That's most important. The moment you start building your hours, the faster you're going to get through your apprenticeship. That's the whole point. For me, that's the biggest priority, getting your foot in the door. If that's a union, great. If it's not, go wherever they want you and need you. Will the union help me grow more to be ready for level 2 and 3 exams? So the union is very strict on making you grow. So they are very on top of making sure their apprentices are going back to school. My friend Ryan that I was talking about before, advanced was coming around, but they weren't taking him in. So the union hall ended up running their own advanced program there to train people up. So the union's very on the ball with this. They really want their workers to become leveled up as often as they should be. So the union does a great job at this. If you're thinking about the union, absolutely go for it. I'm a big proponent of it. But if you're thinking about service, it's the same sort of thing. Like, there are some service companies out there that are amazing. And what they typically do, they train you up, they help you in getting your registered training agreement done. They sign you up, they are constantly trying to get you work. When you have problems on the job site with theory, they talk about theory, they break it down to you. So it really depends on the company that you kind of set your foot into. The union is just one other version of companies out there, which takes care of its apprentices. Your job is to find any company, including the union, that'll take care of you, that'll help you grow, and that'll be good to you along the way. That's your job. And when you find that, your other job is to be as good to them as they are to you. I hope that answers your question. So Jay Melia responded with Red Seal prep. I assume, Jay, you're asking me how to prep for the Red Seal. All I would suggest is, when I was writing the Red Seal, I wrote it twice, by the way. The very first time I wrote the Red Seal, I realized within the first 15 minutes of the exam that I studied the entire wrong way. So whenever we did Red Seal preparation in plumbing school, we were given a lot of supplementary materials. We were given basically a binder of a bunch of different things that we can read. And every single class, we would also do a Red Seal preparation test. So, like, the questions were similar to what you would get on the exam. I ended up spending a lot of time on the supplementary materials in the first round, just to eventually realize that that supplementary material, as important as it was and really good knowledge, it did not help me prep for the exam the way I needed to in order to succeed. It was all in the tests. So if there's anything that I can suggest, is get your hands on those tests and prep with those. Do those every day, constantly. On the second write of my exam, I passed. And that's only because I strictly and solely focused on the exams and I studied those. And when I finished the second writing of the Red Seal, I already had a game plan going into my third writing, because I couldn't tell if I passed or failed. I already figured out what my weaknesses were on the second writing, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna definitely focus on these and I'll be able to bump my mark up. But thankfully I passed on the second round, and that's all because I spent all my time doing those tests, redoing those tests, memorizing the answers, understanding the concepts, and that sort of thing. I hope that helps. So I got 2 questions from Braden Ettinger. What do you find the most rewarding quality you have developed in your plumbing career? One of the qualities that I've developed is I've become very methodical in the way I work. So I put in a lot of brain power into how I'm going to tackle a problem. I will sit back and I'll think to myself, what's the problem? How do we solve it? Or how many different ways can we solve it? And then what's the most efficient? And I'll sit down and I'll map it in my brain. I'll just stare at the problem, figure out if it makes more sense this way or that way, and I'll spend that time to do that. And I've found that after I've done that, and I've taken that time to do that, then everything else becomes easier. I go to the truck, I get all the appropriate tools and the appropriate materials, I bring them in, I already know where I'm gonna start and I know how I'm gonna end. And a lot of times, because of experience, I know where the biggest tie-up is gonna be, meaning I know where the area of difficulty is gonna start, and I have a game plan as to how to tackle it. I think being methodical, especially in service work, is crucial because sometimes you have to slow down to speed up. Does that make sense? By not slowing down, you make a bigger issue of things. You run into things that you shouldn't have run into all because you were impatient. I've done this time and time again where I don't think about it, I start cutting something and I go, holy crap, I shouldn't have cut that. If I didn't cut that, I would have saved myself a half an hour. So sometimes slowing down and taking it a little bit slow at the beginning will speed you up towards the end. And I think that's just being methodical, being slow and calculated, and then speeding up as you move on. The second question Braden asked is, what was the worst job you were ever on and why? Braden, I think the worst job I was ever on was the one where my father and I had our final argument, and I understood at that point that I couldn't continue on my career with him. And the reason why that was the worst job I was on was because it was such a big turning point in my career that everything that I'm doing now stems from that. It was such a major decision. And one thing I gotta say is that even though it was a very tough decision and my life got harder, I think it was the right decision. And I still feel that way. I think I live a healthier life now emotionally than I did back then. And I genuinely still don't believe that the circumstances would have changed. I still think I would have been just as upset if I was working there right now. So I know that's not really the answer you were looking for. You were looking for like nightmarish customers and stuff like that. But if I were being truthfully honest with you, that was the hardest one. All right, and this last one is from Cliff Gallardo, and this is a very long one, so it's a good one to end on. Here's the question. Hi Kenny, I'm working with Mr. Rooter for 2 months now, and most of the technicians there are not licensed, nor have I heard of them planning to get one soon. Also, I spoke to some of the apprentices who have been working there for a year now, and it seems like the management are not in the talks of signing up apprentices anytime soon. Rather, they rush us to get into a truck and run snaking calls. Now, my question is this a red flag? Is this even normal? Should I be concerned? I mean, the technicians there are very nice and very willing to teach us apprentices, but I also want to get a direction on how to think this through, because ultimately I want to become a real plumber too and get certified eventually. So basically what worries me is just the fact that a lot of, if not most of their technicians aren't licensed, and those apprentices who are not signed up. The only ones who have a license in the company are the owner and the manager. I know this is a lot, Kenny, but I hope you can give me tips on how to handle this. Thanks. This is a really great question because I think there are a lot of apprentices in this situation right here. And this is what I want to say to you. I think we need to distinguish between drain companies and plumbing companies because they're not all the same. From what I've heard, and I don't know if it's still common practice, but I think you can take a drain course. And by taking this drain course, you could eventually open up a drain company, kind of like Roto-Rooter, where they get called in to snake drains and clear drains and that sort of thing. In plumbing, when you get your plumbing license, drains are already built into the career, so you can do both. You can open up a drain company, you can also open up a plumbing company. Is it a red flag? I don't think it's a red flag only because Mr. Rooter is considered a drain company. That's its entire purpose. However, what I think you're asking is if your goal is to get licensed, Is this the right company for you? And I think that is the most pressing question. What's your goal? If your goal is to get licensed and they don't offer registered training agreements, they don't offer signing you up. And if you ask them, they say, no, we can't sign you up. Or they say, yeah, maybe down the road, and down the road never comes. Eventually you will stop growing at this company. They will stop you from being able to get the career path that you want. But if you approach the owner and you ask them, listen, I want to get licensed. Are you able to sign me up as an apprentice, register me as an apprentice with Skill Trades Ontario? And they say yes, then this might be the exact company you're looking for. There are plenty of companies out there where they have competent plumbers that have never been licensed. There's an entire unlicensed workforce out there that's working. Some people are not good at school. Some people aren't interested in school. Some people don't care for the license, so they never get it, sort of thing. And because of all those things, there's a bunch of plumbers out there that are very good, but they don't have their license. They don't get paid top dollar as well. And again, it's cheaper for companies to keep unlicensed people because they're not going to be as expensive as your licensed plumbers out there. So there's some benefit to companies for that. But what I would do is sit down and think to yourself, are you growing in this company? Are you still learning? If you're learning, then it might be worth sticking it out a little bit more because drains are a fundamental topic of conversation with our career. If you're not learning, then maybe it's time to approach the owner and say, listen, just so you know, these are my goals. I plan on getting licensed one day, and I wanted to know if you think this is the right company for that. And just find out what they say. If they say yes, ask them, okay, what will it take for me to get my hands on different types of tools? Which journey person am I going to be registered under? Those sorts of questions, and find out what they say. If you get a wishy-washy answer, something that is kind of dismissive and like, we'll figure it out down the road, that might be the first red flag. They might be just keeping you as long as they can without the intention of actually getting you licensed. They also might be solid about it. They might be able to say, listen, if that's what you want to do, then we're going to put you with so-and-so. They're a licensed journey person and they're working on X, Y, and Z. And by working with them, you'll be able to get more knowledge under your belt. They'll be able to help you with theory, etc. So Cliff, going forward, it's going to be a lot of trial and error for you. You're going to have to sit down, come up with a duration of time you're willing to wait to see if your company does make the changes necessary to help you in your career. And if they do it by that point, perfect. You're not worried anymore. But if they don't, then it's time to start looking for other plumbing companies that are planning to do the exact same things you need, which is help you get licensed. I hope that helps. So peeps, those are all the questions to our 10,000 subscriber special. Please do me a favor. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button down below. Hit that bell notification so you know exactly when we're getting videos. Smash that thumbs up and share with friends if you can. Once again, I couldn't do this without you. Literally, I couldn't have 10,000 subscribers if you guys didn't hit that subscribe button. So I appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart. And my promise to you is that I am going to attempt constantly and forever to get more useful content to you guys and find a way of having this sort of stuff happen more often. That's my promise to you. I still love teaching plumbing. I still love the career. I still love attempting to make bite-sized videos for you all to enjoy and also learn something from. And if that's what you want, that's what you're gonna get. Much love. Thank you again for 10,000 subscribers. And here's to 10,000 more. I'll see you plumbers very soon. Kenny Molotov, guys. Peace, baby.